All right, guys, how you doing? This Kai with Kai Dragon Garden Cooking with my mom Ann, and today we were going to go ahead and do a little Q&A while we're doing some seed setup live. I know that I did a video yesterday that talked a little bit about seed starting. Problem was, I know a lot of it you didn't get the view from a top-down angle, so I'm doing it this way just to kind of demonstrate and kind of explain my thoughts on certain seed containers. But this is also a Q&A session, so if you have any questions about gardening that we might be able to answer, that's something that, I may start trying to get mom and me to do, because I know some people have asked when there's going to be some more son and mother videos, and I got thinking to myself, well, we could always do this and kind of make it work. Now, the only thing is with this, it's a little tricky. I've done this before a couple years ago on Twitch when I was doing gardening, so it shouldn't be too bad. I think everybody should hear okay, and we'll just kind of go from there. They added some timestamps. That's cool. I did not know that. Something new that they didn't have on my other channel. So as some of you may know, that I run two channels, Kai Dragon Media, and also this one, which I'm also going to be working on trying to teach mom how to edit so we can get more videos out. First order of business before we start. I was going to say that sometimes gardening videos do take a little longer to do. We can do, the quick and easy ones, but ones that take time to grow and show you, unfortunately those take a little bit more time. Like the video I released yesterday, that was probably about 2.5 weeks, you think, since I started that?
Probably, at least.
So sometimes, as much as I'd say, you guys may get a little bit of a content drought, at least until we can kind of figure out some type of cadence to get stuff going. Right now we've got tons of videos for this week, and we'll add to the mix this live stream because I think it will help get folks more aware of us. These live streams will probably only be about an hour and a half, depending on questions and answers. But without further ado, I'm going to start this, and while I'm doing this, I may even ask mom some questions relevant to gardening with her experience, because she is a third or fourth generation gardener. I had it wrong after we started talking about that, because I'm like, wait a minute, your mom was a farmer and a gardener, your grandma was a farmer and a gardener. I'm like,
and hers was.
And I'm like, holy crap, we got a long generation of farming, which I continued that tradition, and I was like, okay, well, this would be interesting. So I guess the first question I'm going to ask you, until we get some questions, what type of methods did your mom and grandma do for seed starting? Because I know times have changed, but what kind of was the difference on that?
So back then, they didn't do a lot of seed starting indoors per se. They did a lot of the old-fashioned save your tin cans from your vegetables, save your milk jugs, save your milk cartons. Back then, they saved everything. I mean, if it was a little piece of thread, they'd wrap it on a spool. Times were hard, money was tight. You had to rely on what you had available. And so when they were starting seeds, a lot of times they would do the old-fashioned way. They didn't have the special seed starting mix that you could buy, but most of them were very knowledgeable and frugal, and they knew that the soil had to be just so for those seeds to take off, especially if they were going to plant them outside in the garden. So they had a lot of sifters, the great big huge sifters that would hold probably 5 to 8 cups of flour and stuff. They would always make sure that they had an extra one that they used for gardening, or the colanders and stuff. And they actually sifted their dirt. They'd mix that dirt with their compost. And Mom used a lot of coffee grounds. She didn't really care if she drank the coffee. She just every morning made coffee, and the coffee grounds, especially her roses, got coffee grounds. That was just something she always did. And of course, then there would be a lot of worms, and you know that that's also going to be a beneficial thing. So what they would do with like the milk jugs and stuff is they would cut them in half, and they would just cut it like 3/4 of the way, so the lid would still be, the top half would still be intact with the bottom half. And a lot of people still do this method now, and direct sow during the winter months, and they would cover things up with leaves. But when they were planting in those milk jugs, they would put one small hole with a little ice pick or whatever they had available, and just one small drain hole. They didn't do a lot of drain holes in those containers because they wanted to be able to fill it with dirt, put the seeds in about a 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch, depending on what they were planting, and then cover it back up with dirt. And then they would pull that lid back over, and they kept the caps on. And sometimes they would drill holes in the caps. Most of the time they did not. But they would put them outside, and what they had back then was what they called the little hot caps. And they were
Hot caps.
They were kind of, it reminded me of wax paper, but they looked like a hat. And sometimes Grandma would actually make stuff like that by folding paper like into a fan, and then take 2 ends and glue them together, or whatever they use. Sometimes she would use a needle and thread, kind of sew them together. But they would put those hot caps over the tops of their plants. Another thing that they used a lot of was the bigger planters that they had for outside their home. If they were not using them, they always recycled their dirt. So they would dump the soil out if it wasn't a perennial or something that was coming up every year. They would use those pots as insulators. So they would take a bigger pot, say, if you had a number 10 size pot, you could cover a gallon milk jug up with that if you needed to. And they used a lot of blankets and sheets. They'd cover that stuff up at night when it was getting cold, and then during the day when the sun had come out and warmed back up, they would uncover. It was a lot of work, but that's how they did a lot of their seed starting if they wanted to start from scratch. Otherwise, everything was direct sewed, and a lot of blankets. They made a lot of quilts. So, those quilts had that fiber fill, polyester fill, or whatever they used, or sometimes they used several blankets that they wove together to make their quilts. They utilized that with their garden. So, and then if they wanted to plant a lot of flowers, like in the front of the house and stuff, they did a lot of winter sowing. So come January, they would just sprinkle whatever seeds they wanted to plant and sprinkle them around the front area of the house, and then cover them up with leaves.
So they didn't have seed starting mix back then. They just recycled dirt with fertilizer in it then.
For the most part, I think the reason why I didn't see that much of it to be honest with you, is because we were very poor. So if it was available, that wasn't something that my parents spent money on. They would rather use a sifter and make their own dirt. And the dirt would be very, very fine just by sifting it. And I can remember times where us girls would go out and take turns turning that sifter and smoothing out all that dirt so it'd be ready for mom or grandma to use, whoever we were helping out. And it was kind of fun. It was like you were going to have to do it, so you might as well like it. But I don't know, just once you started seeing a flower or a vegetable or something pop out of that dirt, there was just something that seemed magical about it, even as a kid, that, hey, that was just a little seed. Now look at it. And then over the week or two period, and you'd see it grow. And it was just an incredible thing to watch. And then, mom would always stress, they'd have to get so big. Most of the vegetables and stuff, she wanted to make sure it had 2 or 3 good leaves before she put them into the ground.
So I got a good question for you here. So did your family, and we're talking 1900s folks, we're talking 1800s, so, and mom would probably know this, did they really did they recycle their own seeds? Like, did they grab the seeds from a tomato and then just replant them?
Absolutely. Grandma didn't know. A lot of times they didn't know what they were going to get. They just saved the seeds, and they would let them dry out, and she'd put them in little brown bags. I don't remember.
So probably
medicine bottles. I remember them saving a lot of medicine bottles and stuff and putting seeds in them, and they would write right on the medicine bottle what they put in there. But when you were planting tomato seeds, you didn't know for sure what kind of tomatoes you were going to have growing. I mean, because it wasn't.
So you didn't see Roma, or you didn't see Rutgers, and I know a lot of the plants are newer because we've done so much crossbreeding and cross-pollinating. Some have been hybrids, some are brand new species that are not hybrids and stuff, which that's just, we're always trying to build better plants, which I think that's also what led to a lot of the patents. Where everything became patents, like Burpee owns this rights and this other company owns this rights to them. Now some of them are universal. So this is the first one that I planted, was Black Beauty, and I just put 3 seeds in each one. We love eggplant, great for eggplant parmesan, just grilled eggplant. If you do it right, it's really good. So we're doing that one, and we're doing the smaller containers because they fare pretty well to start. This one will probably have to go on a peat mat because it requires so much. But back to the conversation. So I guess copyrights with seeds must have been in the mid 1900s or late 1900s, because I never heard of somebody being able to own the rights to a seed. But I guess the new ones they come up with through all their hybrid, because
they probably do have to have through rights.
So to explain that, you got heirloom plants. Those are your base plants that have always been around forever. Then you have your hybrids, and then you have brand new plants that are created from that. So it gives a little bit of a different flavor with it, really.
Well, and every year they're trying to get more species that will handle the different types of climate and changes in the weather, like more plants that can stand getting too wet when we have a real rainy year, or you're going to see a lot of drought and heat resistant plants or seeds, because so much of the country is going through a drought right now. And I know that they said they would rather people took their lawns right now and planted more native flowers and things like that to help increase the amount of bees and butterflies and pollinators just in general, because using chemicals over the years, as much as people have done, has really hurt the population of the pollinators. And so if you look and you do some of the research online and look, there are programs out there where you can certify your yard for trying to make it more friendly with the butterflies. There's a thing on there about saving the bees, and I know that does hold true. And it's like, now I was highly allergic to bees, and I still am, and so I have to watch any of those little things flying around, whether it's a wasp, bumblebee, it didn't matter, mud dauber. If they stung me, I was probably going to go to the doctor or have to take Benadryl or something. I just was highly allergic. But Mom, she did not like to use a lot of chemicals, even in her garden when I was growing up. And she wanted to use more natural things. They did a lot with vinegar and salt and soap, which...
And for the viewers, if you have any questions about gardening or want to hear more about some of these history things, please just let us know in chat. But yeah, we'll be talking about this quite a bit. I'm doing Black Beauty zucchini now. Then I'll let Mom continue. So what this is here is we're using the big bonsai containers. It has more dirt. And with zucchini, they need more space. I don't recommend using the ones that I just did for the eggplant, because I'm finding your larger plants do better in some like this that has more dirt, and then you're just going to have to carefully dig up with your hand the root and the plant and transplant.
A tablespoon works great when you're getting a seedling out, or even a fork, the tines of a fork. But you want to remember, when you're planting any squash or anything that's got a bigger seed, do point side down and don't lay it flat. It's actually going to germinate faster by going point down in the ground when you're doing that.
Okay, and we were talking about drought resistance and probably producing more food. One thing I was going to mention to Mom is I used to transcribe when I was out of college because I was trying to find odd jobs to work. There's a farmer that was talking with me, and he said, and I was transcribing it for my professor. And I remember this farmer stating something interesting to me when he said, if every farmer, and this is before corporate took over most farming, if every farmer just took an acre of their land and converted it into vegetables and fruit, we could feed this country 3 times over. But a lot of times gardening your vegetables, your fruits is not considered, because you make more money on your soy and your wheat. And now granted, wheat's really important. And Tom Berry says, hello, everyone. I'm glad it's finally spring. Yes, I am too. I am very happy that it's spring. It allows us to get a lot more done. Here in the Midwest, it has been awful windy. It's been about Thursdays, we get 30 to 60 mile per hour winds. So filming has been a challenge to work on some of the gardening content. It's been a juggle, because Mom hears me go, dang it, it's windy again. How are we supposed to do it? Because I'm trying to mitigate all our wind noise. That way we don't have to record the audio. But with this high-end mic that I use for my other channel, we may have to start just doing some audio voiceovers over the video. Maybe we'll figure it out. But I'm glad you're here. And also Kyo Toro, which One of my good friends says, don't forget cattle take a lot of farmland as well. Yes, that is true. Cattle do take a lot of farmland.
Yes, they do. And, they have to do that. Another thing I'm going to say too, just because of growing up on the farm and the different land they had, we had different areas where we did have fruit trees planted. And as a general rule of thumb, in order for a fruit tree to produce well, you had to have a pair. And it didn't mean it had to be the same fruit tree, but there had to be more than one. So we did have an area where we had cherry trees, and believe me, that is a pain in the butt to be up on a ladder as a little kid picking these cherries, and you don't care at the time. You're not looking to see if they're, great or whatever, because you're going to sort them later. But you're going to be up there and you have to pick as fast as you can, and especially when they're ripening, because you don't want the birds to eat. And, they made the best cherry pies back then. They had the old-fashioned cherry pitter where you had to put the cherries all into this thing and a colander and grind it, and then the pits would fall out, and you had to hand remove them. And of course, when you were eating the cherry pie, you had to warn everybody, make sure you're watching out for the pits. But
and nowadays they'd sue you for that.
Yeah, we had pear trees. We had a couple of them on the farm, and of course, and they made a lot of jelly too. So, those they really liked having the different types of fruit available, and there was some things that you could not grow in the Midwest. So, the ones that I remember the most are the apple trees, the cherry trees, and the pear trees. Those were the ones that I remember getting to do a lot of picking. And of course, then they would stop, because there was places where they did actually just do nothing but have orchards. And every year we would stop to get the big bushel baskets of the peaches and stuff, so they could make a lot of things out of peaches. They made a lot of jams and jellies, a lot of pies. They were German. They made a lot of kuchen. It's like a German coffee cake. Absolutely delicious.
It sounds super sweet.
It is super sweet. It's probably a diabetic nightmare, but it absolutely delicious. Another thing that they grew a lot of stuff that people don't care to eat that much now, or they don't even know about it. A lot of people don't know what rhubarb is. Ew. Unless it's in a pie. And Mom always planted rhubarb in the garden. That was always a must. And the other thing that I wished I could find again, but I think the reason why you can't find them is because the birds would scatter the seeds by eating the berries. But we had these little tiny, they almost look like blueberries, but they were called a blackberry. And they were incredibly delicious. And they are not like the blackberries you buy in the store now. They just look like the small little round berry. And I have yet to be able to find something like that to where we could grow it. But I mean, it just looked like little weeds growing in the garden. But the berries were so small, and you had to go out there and pick a lot of them. But boy, when they got ripe, they were ready to go. And
yeah, you were telling me about that. That was those really sweet blackberries that grew on the ground, kind of like the ones we're trying to grow. The ground cherries this year, the Chinese ground cherries.
That's something new that we want to try. I've seen some videos with it, and they looked really good. So I thought, let's try it.
Rhubarb grow in the dark sounds scary.
Yeah, rhubarb it's an acquired taste.
Oh,
I did not particularly care for her jams and jellies with it. It was too stringy for me. I just didn't
isn't that
like
in mincemeat pie? Rhubarb.
But I don't know. I
thought that
stay
was
away from mincemeat.
I thought that was mincemeat
But
pie with rhubarb in it.
You see strawberry rhubarb pies all the time around Christmas time, and they're really good. So, and Mom, when it came to pies and cakes and cinnamon rolls and bohemian kolaches and stuff, that the woman knew what she was doing there. I mean, I wished I would have paid more attention.
Well, I do remember a lot when I was a kid going on the farm and living most of the summers out there. And it was fascinating. It's what got me into farming. The only problem with it, agriculture, while it's fascinating, don't let people fool you. Only certain farmers made money. Most farmers I knew, they were banking on getting a check from the government because their crops were lost. I mean, and that was mostly just to cover the cost because you'd have good years, bad years, and sometimes more often than not, you had the bad times. And yeah, and a lot of farmers truly didn't own their land, they leased it.
And insurance was very expensive, just like it is now. So
a lot of people don't know because they think when you're a farmer, you own the land. A lot of times you have leasing rights. And that's what my grandfather had, leasing rights to the land. He didn't actually own most of that land. So, at the end of the growing season, he had to pay X amount of dollars of his harvest. And, that was pretty rough back in the day. And I mean, it's still rough. That's why I think corporate farming took over, because they could buy all the land and just do it themselves. Your Monsantos of the world and things like that. So a lot of your traditional farming and gardening's been slowly phasing out over the last several decades. In fact, when you're talking Midwest, your Kansas, your Oklahoma, Nebraska, Missouri, a lot of those were they would call their breadbasket states. A lot of farms are drying up and going to corporate, as either the younger generation didn't want to take over, which I don't blame them for the money. Really struggle that, and you need a lot more acres to make money, and that means really leasing, and then you have to hope you have a good season and the wheat prices or soy prices. And part of that again comes down to a lot of them didn't grow food, or they grew very little food, and they grew commodities. And at least I know a grandpa, he grew wheat, and they did grow a lot of vegetables, but I know a lot of farmers that it was all commodities. And that's why you see a lot of your vegetables and stuff in the United States coming from like Mexico and stuff, because they have warmth all year round. So like your peppers, your tomatoes, things like that, you're always going to get them. And there's a lot of areas here in the US that we could do that, like certain parts of Texas, Mexico, things like that. But I think New Mexico, Arizona, I think you could do a little bit in Arizona. Most of it's desert, but I think there's a few areas that's more savanna type. I think you could do a lot of that stuff there. But like here in in the actual center United States, due to our cold season, we can't keep tomatoes all year round or peppers. So that's something to keep in mind when you're going to the store. Just think about what you're buying, because a lot of times it's either A, we don't have it right now, or there could be shortages. It's a very interesting thought. I mean, this year we'll probably try to sell some of our stuff to the farmers market if we do that, but a lot of times we eat it. I mean, we during the spring and summer we try to grow as much as we can. Last year we just ended up using all the food and giving away some, but hopefully this year we'll teach you guys some canning techniques and stuff. We didn't do it last year, partially because we still had so much left over with salsa and everything, because we did a lot of canning the year prior. As before me and Mom partnered up on this business adventure on YouTube, she had her own garden and I had my own garden, and we were competing kind of a little bit. But then it was like last year she retired and I said, you know, why don't we just team up? Zone. I can tell you what zone I am here, I think. 7. Yes.
And the zone that I was in before was a zone 5. And in a 20 by 20 space, I had tomatoes coming out of my ears. I mean, the whole neighborhood got tomatoes, and I would haul tomatoes to my son's house, and I'd say, okay, this weekend we're canning. I'm making salsa. I don't care what we do with them, but I've got so many tomatoes, I don't know what to do with them all, because that was just something that they seemed to do really well. And I planted so many different types, and I caught some sales. I was always watching for sales, and if they had plants that looked really bad and they were closing them out, I was like, I'll take them home and I'll baby them and
Tom
see what
says,
happens.
thanks, I'm New Jersey Zone 7A. Oh, yeah. So you have a very, very short growing season in New Jersey compared to like here in the Midwest.
Yeah. It's really important when you're growing anything to kind of know what your zones are. And all you have to do is type your zip code into Google or go to the Farmer's Almanac and type in your zip code, and it'll tell you what zone you're in. But there are some things that you cannot grow because of the climate. It's either too cold or way too hot. And you can buy some of those little tiny greenhouses for outdoors and wire them down, but you need to make sure that you've got them up against a fence or somewhere that the wind's not going to just totally trash them out on you. And, you know, put bricks in the bottom. I've got a couple that I'm using this year. In fact, I've got one that sits on the ground and it's leaned up against our rain barrels. But I'm using that because I'm actually sowing some flower seeds in gallon jugs, just the way I did when I was a little girl when I helped Mom. So my plans are to redo my son's front yard and make it look a lot nicer. And
I'm tired of Bermuda, and we've got my front yard, unfortunately, gets saturated so bad. When we get just a little bit of rain, when you walk on it, your feet sink 3 or 4 inches easy. So I told her, I said, I want to redo this whole front yard. That way I can get water away from my house. So I said, I'll get some money saved up, get a French drain built, and then let's just put good plants in there that'll take up that water, because I don't want water in my house, and it's just been a pain. And plus, I'm tired of just grass. I want to see actual really good plants like shrubs and things like that. Things that are native to Midwest. Although I did let the spoiler out there, Kansas. But yeah. It's one of those things that I know that the biggest thing we're dealing with is drought. And we're still in a drought. We haven't seen rain or any real good moisture in probably 4 months. We had the snowstorm that was about 6 inches. But unfortunately, snow is less than rain.
a lot less.
So our lake that feeds most of our stuff is, I think, down 60%. So food prices are going to be more expensive this year, and that's another problem. A lot of people don't realize that. If water companies raise water prices, depending where you're at, based on your water consumption, that goes up. Last year we had a $380 water bill. I thought Mom was gonna think I had a heart attack there, and it was because we'd been watering about every 3 days, and it was 100 plus degrees out, and we just needed to keep the plants alive through July and a little bit of August. And I was just floored because I told her, I said, based on what my calculations are, if that's what they're charging, because it went from $3.80 a unit to $7.60 a unit, and then $15.30 or something like that a unit after so much, and that was the top end. And I was just like, holy crap. And they were doing that because they said they wanted to deter people from watering their yard. But businesses were getting hammered by it. Food producers were getting hammered by it. And I'm like, that's not good for a lot of grocery stores that buy local. And I've been floored about how we've been handling things right now. I mean, I'm one of those that's biased, I guess, when I say I don't give a damn about grass. If it's not native to your state and it doesn't survive, hell with it. I mean, you can make some really cool landscape with rocks and cactus if you're in the desert. It's just all really depends on what you're wanting to do. But our biggest bane, and that's why you've probably seen me do several zucchini, we have really bad plagues of vine borers, and there's 100,000 different ways you can try to fight them. But as we have found over the years, the more zucchini you have, the better you are, because your vine borers, no matter what you do, will ultimately win. If you use diatomaceous earth, you got to reply it, because if it gets wet, it's not good. So if you end up getting a bunch of rainstorms, then that gets costly. You can use some chemicals, but I try not to use a lot of chemicals. And yeah, Ramcross says cucumbers as well. Hey, Ram. The other thing with it is, once they get in, you can also do emergency surgery on the plant, cut the side open and try to dig out all the worms. But at that point, you're just hoping for a miracle that it survives. And that's where we just came to the point that once they've infested, pull it. Now she's going to try a tent video this year. She thinks she has an idea, but the problem with that is you have to self-pollinate them. So that means going out at 6, 7 in the morning, getting a Q-tip and taking the pollen from the male flower and putting it in the female flower. That way you get the zucchini, because you're going to be keeping the pollinators out as well. That's the only other option I can think of. Even if you had a greenhouse and you kept the door shut. I mean, one year I did netting, really, really tiny, thin netting, and they still found a way to get in it. And
they're sneaky little devils.
And it looks, it's a weird looking bug. It's probably the size of a wasp. So it deceives people because it looks like either like a bumblebee or a wasp or something. I can't remember what the closest is. I just know when I see it that I'm already trying to kill it in the garden before it lands on anything. But usually by then it's already laid hundreds of eggs on one of your leaves, and so and the sad part is that's what a lot of our family eats a lot of. Did I put in here? I think I did. Sidetracked.
And then
Did
you
I?
need to succession plant a lot when you're growing something like that. But we're going to try some different things. Last year it was really successful, but I ran out of time. When I was growing squash and cucumbers vertically, and I had them growing up a piece of string and using tomato clips on them, and they were all starting to produce real good. But like I said, I run out of time because it got cold, and once it got too cold, that was the end of that.
Well, we got blessed with a good weather this year. After the heat wave, we stayed in the 60s and 70s, and we produced a lot more up until the second week in November. And we talked about that. We were just like, okay, this weather's not normal, but what was our best crop? That's a good question, Ramcross. I want to say the peppers. We had peppers, Big Berthas
yes.
like this, that just, they're huge. Let me angle it this way. They're just about that big. And we would make stuffed peppers out of them using cream cheese, bacon, or rice, tomatoes, and hamburger. Oh, man. Those were a common household dish during the summer.
About every other day. I gave away a lot of peppers though too. I just wanted to try many different things. I did learn a few things. Some stuff I had forgotten, and you really got to pay really close attention to companion plants. And one thing I know is a big no-no, and I knew it when I was a kid, and I never even thought about it. But there was some cabbage plants in there with the pepper plants, and I didn't even think about it. And then one day I was like, what is these bugs are eating of this cabbage? I'm just going to pull it. As soon as I pulled the cabbage out of that bed, those peppers went nuts and started producing and getting taller and thicker. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you're not supposed to put cabbage anywhere near peppers. And I knew that, but somehow a seed or something must have got in there. And so I know it's really essential for you to pay really close attention when you're rotating garden beds. If there's any leftover seeds from year to year, you can get a straggler that's going to show up, and it can
corn
havoc to your other plants. Yeah.
So I experimented with corn last year. It was something, and I should have researched my companion plants a little better, but that's why I should always have a guide next to me, because there's so many yes nos because of things. But what happened was I planted corn near potatoes and tomatoes. They were still about 4 to 5 feet away from them, but the corn roots themselves were going deep enough that they were interfering with the tomatoes and potatoes, and they were stealing the nutrients from those. And then the tomatoes turn on, try to steal the nutrients back from the corn. So all three in that vicinity of a probably 10-foot square, maybe,
they were competing.
For the nutrients, and so none of them were as good.
And the potatoes were little tiny things. They were great for potato pea soup, but that was about all you could do with them. Yeah. And it was disappointing. This year, we're going to do something different with potatoes, so I don't have to worry about that nonsense again. So later on in the year, you'll be seeing a video where we're going to actually plant potatoes in either a tall trash can or laundry basket. So
Aaron Cross says red potatoes. Yes, we're gonna do Idaho again. I can't think of the exact name of it. We're gonna do gold potatoes and red potatoes because they're all really good. Now, what I'm doing going through here is I'm looking for specific ones, because some of these I know that Mom likes, and I'm trying to get these all set up too, because we're getting closer to that. So a lot of this, like spinach I just sow in the ground. I don't even do indoors. It's such a short window of germinating and going that I don't bother with it. You can do basil indoors to start. Cabbage, we already planted some. There's some videos coming out on the cabbage and Brussels sprouts we just did. Got quite a few different videos that I just got to finish editing and come out. And I didn't put anything out today because I knew we were going to be doing this live stream. And this is something I may start doing on Tuesdays with Mom, just so we can kind of interact with you guys and answer Q&A questions and stuff. Same thing with these. You can always start these. They're just peas in the ground outside. So I'm not worried about those. Now the question somebody might ask is, well, what do you know if you want to grow them indoors or outdoors? You really don't. Everything can be sown outside traditionally, but a lot of plants, if you have the right grow lights and stuff, you can start it earlier. And that's what we like to do. It's just one of those things. And like I said earlier, heirlooms are universal. So this is Fairy Morse, sells the same exact Black Beauty eggplants as Burpee. And so certain plants is open season on it. Other plants are trademarked. So you have to research if you're going to sell plants or if you're going to use plants, just kind of, or sell produce. You just got to make sure you look and see which ones. Now, a lot of times if you buy the seeds, you can sell the produce, but I just double check with your copyright laws. Because yes, seeds have copyright. It just depends on which one you grow. Like there's a Burpee one that's unique to them. That's a yellow pear, super sweet. They're tiny. They're like the 1,000 cherry tomatoes. But the nice thing with them is they grow. In fact, here's an example one right here. This is Honey Delight Hybrid. Very, very tasty one. This is a Burpee exclusive.
And I will tell you a little story about this one. At the garden that I had 100 miles away, at a friend's house in this 2020 area, I had just one of those plants, and once fall came around, I didn't want to pull that plant because we had 14 redbirds. I also had this massive nature sanctuary for the squirrels and the birds and stuff, and I'm really into that, and I enjoy seeing the different birds as they come through, and the hummingbirds and the redbirds. Those are probably two of my favorites. But anyway, I didn't pull the plant. So last year, my friend tells me, well, you know that plant that you left up and you didn't pull? I've been eating tomatoes all summer. And I go, what are you talking about? He goes, the little yellow tomatoes. He goes, there must be hundreds of them laying all over the ground. I just left the plant do its thing, and I go out there every day and eat tomatoes. I went to his house and I couldn't believe it. I said, are you going to tear that plant down this year? And he goes, no, I'm going to see if it comes back up again. I'm like, okay. But it was a wonderful producer, and those were super, super sweet tomatoes. I mean, it was great just to go out there and snack on. So not a good thing if you're worried about watching your sugar, because I'm sure as sweet as those were, it probably did elevate the blood sugar a little bit. But they are really a good tomato, really colorful in salads. I like mixing the different colors. I like the little purple tomatoes and the orange ones too. We had a really good success with the small orange tomatoes last year here. So I had the orange and yellow and the red. So, and then the neighbor guy, he really liked the small tomatoes. So I'd always fix a variety pack and have him do some woodworking stuff for me and hand him a basket of tomatoes. And it was kind of a nice thing. I'd get stuff done that I didn't want to have to do, and using hand tools like saws and stuff is not really my idea of a good time.
And Ram says, I thought you were going to say they weren't tomatoes. No. But this year we're going to do something ridiculous. I don't know how it's going to go with the drought and stuff, but if it succeeds, there will be a video on it at some point. I'm going to grow what they call the Carolina Cross, 200-pound watermelons. I'm going to try it this year. We have a limited space, so I've got permission from my neighbor to
let the vine grow
over his fence and into his yard, and I can go over and take care of the stuff as needed. So it's that's one of those that I had to have the space for, otherwise I was not going to grow it this year, because there's just no way, and I wasn't going to put it in the front yard and let everybody run and try to steal all those massive watermelons. But no, I thought it was going to be fun, so do that. Because I mean, who could resist seeing a 200-pound watermelon? If you've never seen a Carolina Cross, definitely look it up. It's they have people do competitions at like state fairs and stuff with those. So I told Mom, I said, if we got one that's over 200, I'd even enter in the state fair this year, just because I think that'd be awesome. Granted, carrying that thing around in the back of a vehicle is not going to be fun. We'd have to get a truck, but still it'd be worth it. Just say, hey, we grew that. But Mom says, how the hell are you going to carry it? I said, have to get a dolly.
We'll figure out a way. Or I take a picture of it and cut sections, and everybody can have a section to eat.
Am I going to Gallagher smash it? No.
Oh, that would be awesome.
She's not wrong, but no. Although, depend on how many grow, because each plant can grow anywhere from 2 to 3 or 4, depending on the environment. So I'm planning on only growing 2 of them to see what they do, because because of the space, I don't want to do more than that. And I'm going to have to adjust the soil where I'm going to put it. So I may have to start it in a different type of container, because I'm going to need a lot more sand and fertile soil for that this time around. So
I do know a friend, though, that likes taking my leftover round squash and the small size melons, anything that I don't want that might be deformed, and I think, oh, okay, that's not going to be tasting all that good. They like to use those for target practice out in the country, so I guess they're getting a good home.
Yeah, the seeds.
Nothing's going to waste, because then the critters get something to eat afterwards. So
yeah, because the only problem that you don't know about that is if it's going to taste any good or not. Speaking of which, do not ever plant cucumbers, squash, zucchini, any of that next to cantaloupe or watermelon. They're all in the same family, and yes, you can cross-pollinate them on accident. Mom experienced that. Yes. Unfortunately, a couple years ago, she had a watermelon that looked like a curbed zucchini or a squash.
Yeah, it was very unusual looking. Once again, I was trying to grow a lot of food in a very small space, but some of it was not that successful. The cucumbers did fantastic, but we won't talk about the melons.
Oh, yeah, the raccoons stole all our watermelon this year, or last year, so we're trying to figure out a new way to do it. So even when I get to Carolina Cross, we're going to figure out how to seal them up to keep those critters out of our watermelon, because it's going to be really hard to keep them out of 200-pound watermelons. Granted, they probably be so full they'll be laying there. like one I watched a snake once that overate, and he's just laying there like, help. It's just like, I'm done. It's just like, yeah, that was my ex-boss. He had a rat snake get in his chicken coop, and when he opened it, it wasn't a rat snake, it was a bull snake. And when he opened it and took it out, he noticed that snake had ate like 3 eggs and couldn't even move. You just see these giant eggs in it.
I'm sure.
What's the hardest crop you try every year and maybe haven't got it right? Mine is zucchini and squash, and not because we're doing anything wrong. It's just trying to keep the parasites off of it and using every form that you can. And sometimes you succeed or not. The other one that I had a hard time with was grapes, because cardinals love grapes. I have a 3 or 4 grape plants. They're about 4 years old now. Every year I get ready to go harvest grapes because you have to wait quite a while for them. Most of them are gone. And even with netting, we've had birds get underneath the net and then get stuck, and we've had to help them out. So, they're already in there eating, but I'm not going to let them get trapped under it. So that has been my bane, because I feel like if I'd known what I know now, I probably would have never done grapes. I would have used that to grow more things like asparagus, but it's still worth it. Have I tried writing a stern letter to the pests? No, I've also tried to conquer their territory, but that didn't work out very well either. I guess you can't do world conquest on bugs. That's a joke that Ram would get, since on my other channel I've been playing a lot of games that involve world conquest strategy wise. So Mom,
Trying to get the good, you got to really try and get the good bugs in to help you get rid of the bad pests. And that's easier said than done. We were fortunate enough last year that I'd seen 2 of the praying mantises out of the 6 eggs that we put out to hatch.
And if they hatched, there was about 100 eggs per sack. But when they first come out, it's basically survival of the fittest. You just may as well play the old Star Trek theme song, the da 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 da. Yeah, because they're all fighting for dominance, and then once they survive and eat each other, then they move on. And if the territory is good and there's plenty of food, they'll stay. If there's not enough food, they'll leave. Luckily with ours, I believe we have enough food with all our crops and bugs that they'll stay. But ladybugs is another one that we've been trying to get, but the problem is they're the same way. They will migrate, and you can introduce any bug into your area that's native to your state that's beneficial. Now, will they stay there? That's another question.
And I think last year I probably saw 2 or 3 ladybugs tops, and there should have been more because we did get aphids on the tomatoes and stuff, and they like to go after them. I did see a couple of the lacewing bugs, and those are also a good pest to have in your garden.
Wasps are actually good, believe it or not, folks.
Yes.
I watched on my cabbage a year before we started the gardening channel. I sat there and watched a wasp sit there and eat all the green caterpillars on a cabbage, and I didn't even know they did that. I was fascinated just sitting there watching it, because all those years I thought all they did was just, they were a nuisance. They were like hornets, just not really other than a predator bug. But no, that I thought that was really cool that they actually do provide a service for your garden. Now, getting stung by it, you got to be careful, because I know certain people are allergic to that, and having that happen is not a good thing. And Around Cross says you got to pee around the perimeter. Yeah, well, that's what you got dogs for.
Or the other creatures that end up coming in the yard, like kitties
Yeah, that's
and the raccoons.
Yeah, that is a problem. I mean, so what do you think your hardest one was, Mom?
I'm probably going to stick with the zucchini because that was just like a fighting battle. I said, we're going to get zucchini if it kills me. And
I think it killed you.
I couldn't believe it. Every time they'd start, here'd be the vine borer. And I'd be like,
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Now, the other thing to bring up on when you're doing seeds, consider which you're planting. Oregano is technically could be considered a weed. It is very aggressive. It will spread in your ground. This is one you want to contain. It is really good.
And I'm going to add something there. A lot of people will do a section of the garden where they will plant their herbs in small pots and then put them around the perimeter of the other vegetables and stuff because they are great for pest control and stuff. But a lot of your plants like that become invasive because they just get so big they will take over a garden bed. Like we have a sage plant that I need to get moved. I dug up what was left of the time and I'm going to replant that. Rosemary, oregano, your basil, any of your mint family, those will grow like crazy if you turn them loose, just sowing them in the ground, and they can take over a garden bed. So it's better to put them in a pretty good size pot. So the more room you give it, the more it's going to grow. And so it's up to you how big you want that plant to get.
Brown Cross asks, is there any other crop other than the 200-pound watermelon you really want to try? There's a lot of plants I'd like to try, but my climate, or until I get a greenhouse built, would be that, which, the dream is take off the gardening channel and my media channel, and I want to basically fully retire my dad's and move out in the country and get a greenhouse built and stuff. But I already told Mom, I said I kind of want to stick also true to everyday gardeners, not the ones that get so big and they have these multi-million-dollar operations, and it feels like sometimes bragging rights about it. More what I would like to do is, if we got that successful, I would still like to maintain this acre of house and still continue to garden, because my goal is to teach people everywhere that it is okay to grow in your backyard in a small space, and that there's cool techniques. The only thing I would do is I'd have more room to experiment without contaminating. And that's what I'm looking forward to doing, is experiment with different plants to see what you can come up with that are heirloom versus risk and contamination everywhere. Because, what if you could crossbreed aroma with, say, another heirloom tomato, things like that? That'd be cool, just to experiment and see. Also test spacing more. Be able to have your own space enough to say, can you grow 20 tomatoes all next to each other? Granted, the answer is no. But maybe there's a way.
You can, but when you're doing tomatoes, it's just like anything else. You have to keep your larger sized tomato crops away from the smaller size, because you don't want them cross pollinating.
Yeah, because you'll end up getting smaller tomatoes or bigger tomatoes.
Yeah, the big tomatoes will end up being real small. So that's something you want to usually keep them in a separate bed. Now, I am going to do something different this year. I'm looking forward to it, and that is growing tomatoes on a trellis, an arch trellis. So I've bought a couple arch trellises already and got the plans for how I want to do that. I think it'll be kind of neat to be able to pick the fruit from an arch trellis. It's easier to see, and it might keep me more motivated to canning whatever is extra.
So this okra here, I'm just going to be sowing this directly in the ground. I'm not going to bother with this. Oh, we had a lag there. Yeah, I'm just going to do this in the ground. And also keep in mind, it's cheaper when you buy a bigger bulk. I got this one at an Atwood store. So I think I saved probably $10, and there's a lot of seeds in here. So and most seeds you can usually, I've heard 1 year. I've had seeds I've used 2 years. So it just depends on how good the seed is. It just kind of varies on that. But
I've had seeds that have been 5 years old that have done fine. But when I get seeds that are that old, I like to do a test and see which ones look like they're still good and which ones may not be. And that's pretty easy to do. You can just take some toilet paper or paper toweling, whatever you want to use, and you dampen it, lay your seeds on the towel, and then fold it over and dampen it again, and then see what's going to sprout after a few days and what does not, and then you'll know. And the good thing about using like the real thin paper towel or toilet paper is great for this because it's going to deteriorate faster and the plant can pop up and do what it needs to do. So, but you can test your seeds, and that way you kind of know what you're doing. And I always, as a rule of thumb, put 2 or 3 seeds in there in your soil, and then as they come up, thin them out, take the best 2 and take the other one out, just snip it off.
One thing that I was going to bring up that Mom said something, and it was really good to kind of piggyback off that, is there's certain herbs you want to be very careful of. Sage and thyme are perennials, and they come back every year, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And they also recommend keeping sage particularly away from almost all your plants, because sage sucks up a lot of nutrients. I have 2 sage plants that we're talking about moving out of the raised bed, and this was my first year gardening mistake years and years ago. I think 2019 I grew them. I think it's been long, 2019. Yeah, whenever the first year of COVID was when I started gardening. 2019, I think.
Probably be about right.
So yeah, that plant's 6 years old. And they're very tall bush plants that look very beautiful when they flower and stuff. And I haven't really noticed them spreading seeds or anything out anywhere. And I haven't had any invasive with them, but I've thought about moving those to the front of the house just because of their beauty. And if I really want the leaves, I can just cut what I need off out front, because most people aren't going to know the difference when they see it. Rosemary is another one that is really good, but it is a perennial and it also is aggressive. Thyme can be aggressive and grow great for tea and stuff like that, but that's another one. So we think this one didn't make it due to the cold. We're trying to see if we can save it. Otherwise, I've got dozens of thyme seeds, so it's not a big deal. I didn't even think I only did like 3 or 4 thyme seeds and then got one on the first round. So your herbs is something that you really want to be cautious. This one, never plant with anything else. It's parsley. Parsley has two purposes. It's a great herb, but it's also a plant that's used to distract other bugs.
Yes.
It's all your caterpillars and everything will rush to the parsley and eat the parsley. So there's certain plants that are great for keeping pests away from your primary plants, and you want to do these far enough away from all your other plants that they'll go after this one. Because realistically, if I have a big pot of parsley and I have caterpillars devouring that and they don't touch my lettuce, or they don't touch my cabbage, I feel like I've won.
Yeah, it's a win-win. And with so many people living in small spaces, like in the urban areas and the places where they have balconies or apartments and things like that, there's a lot more people planting in containers. And like I said, your herbs are some of the best things that you can plant in containers. But the bigger space you give them, the more room they're going to have to grow. And if you know something's a perennial that's going to come back from year to year, give it that deepness that it needs so it gets a good root foundation, and put it somewhere that you know that it's going to do well, but it's not going to take over an area. So that's one thing you want to look at. A lot of people are actually decorating their front of their homes using lavender and sage and thyme and rosemary. In fact, I just saw a decorating video the other day on people gardening or planting flowers in small spaces, and they were incorporating those herbs into their flower garden. So it's a real common practice, and don't plant them together. You know, you can, if you're going to do like the square foot gardening thing and develop a bed just directly for herbs, just remember which ones are going to take up a lot of space and might just continue on, because they're going to compete for that space.
I left a toothpick in and marked that that's the straight neck squash, the good ones that we harvested. So I ran out of markers, and that other box has the time. But we're going to go ahead and just finish these last two with what we got. So the other thing that I am going to be doing for another video is we have some greenhouses. I want to call them cheap ones. I mean, they're plastic with clear plastic coating with a zipper and stuff. We're going to try them. And I'm curious how well they do versus starting indoors. There's two pros and cons behind that. You don't have a heat mat outside. You have natural light, though. And so you do not have to acclimate your plants to the sunlight if they're growing outside in this greenhouse. All the plants that I grow indoors have to spend time out in the sun in very, very, very small doses. So, like, our plan for these, when they get a little bit stronger, provided it's not super windy, because I still got a fan blowing on them to try to strengthen them. The thing about it is we'll have to put them out for maybe an hour or two in the sun a day for about a week. Then the second week we'll have to do about 3 hours of sun, 3.5 hours of sun a day. And then the third week we'll probably have to up it to about 4 to 5. But the main thing, the reason you do that is if you do not get your plants used to the sun, they will burn up. However, if they're in the clear plastic outside using the natural heat of the sun, there is a very high chance that you don't have to acclimate them. So I'm very curious how to see how they do it. But my only concern is if you get 60-mile-per-hour winds like we've been having the last 3 weeks, it feels like, maybe, how well they will fare against it. Now, granted, I think Mom's did a bunch of wire ties and stuff like that, but I want to test that theory out to see how good they are with some of the vegetables. I know she's growing flowers in there, but I am very curious about how that's all going to go. And so we'll do a video on that. There's a lot of videos I want to do, but it's all just time and putting it out. So like yesterday's video, you could tell the audio is different, but that was 3 different filming. 2 were with camera. 1 was me using this mic here to kind of discuss it. You know, we're a small channel. We appreciate you guys' support and everything. Really do. And the big thing with that is, you know, Izzy trying to grow both these brands. I've very much enjoyed doing Kai Dragon Garden and cooking with my mom. We've talked about doing stuff for years and based on our work schedules and stuff, and she was working a lot of hours throughout the week, so we never seen each other because she was on a swing shift. So it was like you work 2 12s, then you're off a day or 2 and you're catching up sleep on the first day, and then you're working 3 12s and then 2 days again, and then, you know, just trying to get anything was a pain. But she wanted to show these are her journals that
they were done published in March of 2017, I believe. And they have dotted line pages, regular pages that are just blank, and then also the lined pages.
So here's what we were talking about in one of the videos, that you can write what you want and then use this to draw out the layout of your garden plots, so you can kind of know what you're doing, and then you remember what you planted year to year. So there's places for notes. This is the one we were talking about where you can actually use this year to year to plan everything. So like how when I first come in, there's an L shape for mine like that. I could set it up and say, okay, in this plot, you could say that's a foot right there. That's what you want to put, you know, and you can mark which ones you want and how you want to do it. The gardening square tool I found has been really good. I used the pizza cutters yesterday, which is another video, but I discovered with them as we were cutting into the soil, if the soil is not,
you need to have your soil raked well,
perfect, and you have no debris, which means no straw, no nothing, it'll work great. Now the garden square that I used that's coming out this week, I see a lot of uses because it's simple. You just put it down, it marks the square, which is your foot radius, and then you use your marker, stab it, and it makes a hole. You drop the seed down in it and go. And it also has a marker to maximize your space. So if you're planting tomatoes, there's the center hole in there. You just put that there, and so you can maximize. In fact, we were right on the money on a few of the squares. We were wondering how many tomatoes we could really get in there, because a lot of times we just eyeballed it. Sometimes we just measured it a little bit, but we were right on the money on how many plants we could hold in each a garden bed, and it was really good. And so that's the other one. So she's got several of these on Amazon. She likes to do stuff like this. She does coloring books, poetry. She has gardening journals and stuff. So definitely if you're curious, check it out. It should come up under what, Ann Sheaver?
Yes. And spelled with an E, and Sheaver's IE. So if that helps you remember. And if you find the book, like Sweet Garden is probably one of my number one sellers. The books are all the same. They just have 4 different covers because there are a lot of males who garden as well as females. So, like I said, they were designed and published back in 2017, and things have changed a little since then. But I had the idea of drawing out your garden beds and stuff back then when I published them, but I wanted something that you could be able to write your notes in and ideas that you had and just make it all purpose. So, by giving you the choice of 3 different types of pages in the book, and then it's your book to do what you want. So, plan whatever, what seeds you want to grow, what you have on hand. I mean, there are so many things that you can do with a journal. And I journal a lot. I use journals to encourage people to write and take notes and help remember things. And I have a lot of different styles. But what's great is, like I said, if you find the one book, Sweet Garden, on Amazon, you find that book and click on the name Ann Sheaver. It'll take you to my author's page where you'll be able to see about 350 different types of journals and other books. If you're into poetry, I have 2 really good poetry books. The one book was nominated for the best poetry book of 2005 because it was a romance poetry book. But I like to, mess around a little bit with that. And I do a lot of drawing. I do my own illustrations. Taffy's Wonderful Miracle is one of my children's books.
And I was going to bring this up. So I just showed the oregano seeds. Those things are so tiny, they're hard to keep track of. So my advice, if you're going to do it, is do something like this. You barely cover it. So my advice on that is just lightly spray with just a little bit of water. That way they just sink down here in the soil. Just use a spray bottle because you're not really supposed to cover them much with dirt. They'll do their thing. But there's probably at least 150 seeds in here. So they're so ridiculously tiny. And this is why they can be invasive, because you can't catch the seeds. They're very hard to see unless you are looking for the flower and the seeds at the time.
And I'm just saying, when you're planting, if a little bit of wind catches, your seed can be somewhere else in the ground. So by doing it this way, though, when you start your seeds and stuff, you do have the advantage of it's going to be cheaper than going and actually buying that plant somewhere in the store or in a nursery or wherever you get your plants. But you can pick your best plants and go with that and just snip off the other ones, or give plants away to your friends.
And likely a lot of times you end up having really good plants regardless of the seeds. And with that, what you end up doing is you end up giving them away or selling them, because there's a lot of them. The only interesting thing that I'll say, though, with that is I find, even as we're going through ours, there's only about 3 or 4 containers worth of plants now that we've had a bad run of luck on the seeds, and it'll be kind of slim picking figuring out which ones. But then there's other ones like Ramcross's favorite. He said, "Yet Rutgers yuck," where those have all been really nice. They've already got their 4th leaf, getting ready to get their 5th, and
the Romas look good.
Romas, yeah, and so it'll be very interesting. We're still trying to grow a lot of the big tomatoes. Like, we love the super beefsteaks. There's a few new hybrids out that can grow anywhere from 1 to 2 pound tomatoes, which are fantastic for cutting, cooking, fried green tomatoes, which Grandma used to make a lot of those when I was a kid. there's a lot you can do with it.
And I am going to grow some tomatoes in a hanging pot this year too. So we'll be letting you know how that is going to go, because there are some plants that you can grow actually upside down. Tomatoes is one of them that you can grow upside down. But I bought a new batch of seeds the other day that I read an article about, and it's supposed to be real sweet cherry tomato. And I think it was something thumb, or I can't remember the name offhand, but that's going to go in a pot and go hang outside and be on the porch. So we'll have some porch tomatoes this year.
And then as you see, the celery seeds are just as itty bitty tiny too. They're super tiny. So a lot of times these are hard to contain how many you drop in. So, I mean, you know, it's sometimes you only wanted to put 3 or 4 in. You're going to probably put into 8 or 9. I mean, that's...
And celery is another one of those plants that you need to be really careful what you put with it. It's very picky with companion planting. So
just like onions, I'm finding a lot of my greens do not like it. Now they're okay with like peppers and even tomatoes, but I mean, that's just depending on the proximity of how far you plant them. Beets seem to be harmonious with pretty much most plants, which I was shocked. But then, and this one's is also, it says inch and a quarter, or a quarter inch. Since they're so small, using the toothpick here, I would rather just take a water bottle and just lightly spray this just to get them down, or, you know, just try to mix the dirt up a little bit. I mean, there's not a lot you can do with these smaller seeds. I mean, I tried to plant them last year in the ground and none of them ever came up. So this is my goal this year, to try to grow celery, because it's a fibrous plant. It's a great snack plant for those that like to have snacks and stuff. So if I could grow enough of them, that'd be pretty cool. I mean, they're not that expensive, but just to see them grow. This year, also to answer Ramcross, I want to grow more cabbages this year. Cabbages are really good. I like them, and I'd like to see more cabbages. Usually my cabbages don't do great because of spacing, or they get attacked by the caterpillars and there's not enough wasps to eat all the caterpillars. But we did plant a bunch of cabbage yesterday. So, I mean, we'll see how that all develops. But we definitely appreciate all the questions. The one thing where I'm also experimenting this year, I found these are really cool, and I got to thank Mom for it. I ended up buying these on Amazon after she bought a set, but it's USB light, and once you get this, once they start germinating and coming up, you just plug in the USB to it, and it lights it, the whole thing up. That way there's a close proximity of light for the plant. It works great up until you're dealing with stuff like peppers and tomatoes that'll start aggressively growing taller and taller.
Yeah, once they hit the lid,
you've got to switch back to your shelf light. Speaking of which, you know, I've had a lot of people ask how do we do it? How do we grow all this in just a small house? It's just a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. And the answer is anybody can do it if you just find a little bit of space. It's to grow indoors, you just need a small shelf and a few grow lights.
4 or 5 tier.
And as long as you get the ones that say grow lights, don't get just an LED light or like a light you'd use on a reptile. You want to get light that is designed for plants, because they have a specific kind of bulb that they use that simulates the sun and gives the nutrients to it.
I mean, people have had success, so I won't completely discount that. But most of the people that use shop lights and different things like that set something up because they have a lot of room in their basements. And so they've got the room to do something like that. And then they have them hanging off of boards and stuff. And so there's a way they can do that. But as a general rule, go with your grow lights. A lot of times you can get the ones that do multi-connect. And then they do make different things now where, you know, you can plug like 8 or 9 things into one outlet and also have USB plugs. So I've found a couple different ones that I really liked, and they had different places all around the unit to where you could plug stuff in. So we were able to plug in the heat mats and the grow lights and
all right, and give us just a second. I'm gonna change the video here, guys. Hopefully this will work for what we're doing. I don't have a really good second camera, so we're gonna change this up here. And then we'll change this device real fast. Because I just finished the last one, but we'll talk a little bit more about some different things you can do with gardening. And okay, and then we'll make sure Mom can get squeezed in here. There we go. Because we had to just make it adjusted a little bit so we can both talk a little bit more. Because now that we've I finished all the ones that I've had made, which as you can see was quite a few containers. There we go. Let's try to get her a little bit better in here, guys, so that way she can be on camera with me and talk a little bit more.
in the bird's nest here.
Yeah, we threw you in the bird's nest. Yeah, let's just do this a little bit more. There we go. I think we got it in there. But one of the things that we've enjoyed doing has been gardening. I think, in my opinion, gardening has brought us a lot closer. I mean, because there was a lot of times we didn't spend much time at all because of our work schedules and stuff till she retired. And, you know, hobbies bring people together.
I can tell you personally, with everyday life, sometimes the day just seems really down in the dumps and really depressing. And the one thing that I have noticed, let me go out and play in the dirt. I mean, just being out in the dirt, it's like it unleashes something good to where it like pushes a happiness button or something. And I don't know why, but you let me go out there and play in the dirt and I'm just, you know, I'm in a lot better mood, just getting back to nature and stuff. And like I was telling Kai today, I have a new friend now. There's a robin that they stay on the ground, and I had added branches and stuff to my trellis because my trellis is starting to fall apart after 7 years. And so I added branches, and I noticed the little bird hopping up and down on the different branches, and it really loves the apples that I put out. So I was like, okay, I have a new friend to go out and see. So
no, it's funny. She says that while we were recording yesterday, a dove came and visited, and she knows that I like the doves because when I'm out there, they'll walk by me and they don't care because I'm just not doing or moving or anything. This one literally came down in the garden to see what we were doing. You know, if we made it too much sudden movement, she would fly off. But I just sat there and kept working plotting everything out with the garden tools, and just kept staring at us and then eating, and was on the ground for about 30 minutes.
And I told her, look up. I'm putting a nesting box up for you about 8 foot in the air.
So, I mean, it's interesting because a lot of people think they can't go back to nature in big cities. And the truth is you can. You can go back to nature a little bit with gardening. Vertical gardening is probably more powerful than people imagine nowadays, which is why she wanted to do the trellis, that with the curved trellis with tomatoes, because yes, you can grow hanging tomatoes. She saw at in Florida years ago that you could grow watermelon vines on trellises, and then you just use
they had little hammocks built and stuff, and it was getting into hydroponics and stuff. I don't remember what part we were in, but it was one of the little divisions they have, at Florida, Disney, whatever it is there. And it was so interesting. And I was like, God, just think how much stuff you can grow if you're growing it up and it's not going down on the ground. I had the opportunity then of talking to one of the guys later, and he said, if you can get it figured out, it will open a whole new doorway for you. And he says it's so much easier to control the bad pests when you're growing vertically. So I had the challenge last year, and like I said, it was working for me, but I started too late with some of the squash and the melons. So this year I'm anticipating getting that going as earlier the better, after the last frost warning, because I don't want to have something started and have it
should be pretty close
up.
To that.
Yeah, once it going up a vine, it can still kill off the plant because I won't have any way of covering it. So I want to make sure the risk of it getting too cold for that plant is going to be okay. And then we're going to go all in. I've got my area mapped out. Squash is going to be in one area, watermelons and cantaloupe in another area, and my cucumbers in another area. So they're not competing and not going to be able to cross-pollinate or do anything weird like that.
And the cool thing is that I've seen with vertical with the squash, it's easier to catch fine borer eggs on the leaves. And an added bonus to that is if you train it to go straight up and it's going up like this, you can cut most of those low leaves, which will get rid of.
It's not going to hurt your plant.
And you'll be able to get rid of a lot of the stuff that the vine borers hide in. So that's another strategy that we're looking at, because it's became personal, I almost say a personal war with us and the vine borers to find a way to finally beat them at their game, because
you want to outfox them.
Yeah, because it's like Mother Nature is finding a way to stop you from growing it, but it's something that's grown in the Midwest, and you just got to figure out how to beat that pest. And I've used all sorts of different techniques, but growing vertically in this tent thing we haven't done before, so I'm hoping we can, because our family does do a lot of zucchini and squash, especially grilled zucchini and squash. Everybody loves that. Zucchini bread, zucchini noodles. There's so many different things, and you save a lot of money, because if you can keep that plant alive, it can grow through the whole year and just keep producing. It doesn't really shut off. It's another one of those plants like indeterminate tomatoes and peppers that there is no real shut off time on it. It just keep growing. I mean, I found some really massive plants that if they somehow live through the vine borer, you can get a lot of yield from one plant.
And I will be doing more pepper plants and eggplants in like 5-gallon buckets or in the 10-gallon grow beds too this year. So, uh, like I said, you can grow a lot in a small space, and just, check out the stuff that does best for you and your climate and what you guys like. I can't eat the hot peppers, it messes me up. So, as a general rule of thumb, I'm only going to grow maybe one jalapeno pepper plant, or, because we have a whole bunch of chili peppers. I won't have to grow them probably for a while, because 2 years ago when I had that other garden in zone 5, I had so many of those little peppers. I didn't know what to do with them all. I gave some away, and
I have a whole jug over probably a
big 5-gallon jar full, and
they're dehydrated, so they're done. The only thing they do with them now is if I wanted to go ahead and make the powder, they were cayenne peppers, so all I gotta do is just take the mortar and pestle, take them, grind them all up, and we've got fresh cayenne pepper for whatever we want to use it on. Which, to her point, she really can't do a lot of that spice, but I did want some jalapenos, or Anaheim jalapenos, this year, just because having those with cream cheese and wrapped bacon are always really good on the grill.
Yes, they are.
Small doses.
And another thing that people don't think about too is when you get done using a spice and it's empty, don't throw it away if you're growing your own herbs and stuff, because you can turn that into a new spice bottle. So if you do use a lot of spices, I wouldn't throw those away. I would just put them somewhere, so that way at the end of the season, you're good to go when you've got a bunch of stuff that you want to do. Another thing that, while we're talking about starting seedlings and growing stuff, one of the next things that I want to do, I already have them ordered. I have a couple of the stacking planters that I used last year for different things, but I ordered a couple specifically for different herbs that you can grow to make teas with. And so to do a video on doing your own tea garden, because I know there is a lot of people that like having tea.
Yeah, the only downside is depending on your zone. So here's the other thing. There's a downside. Certain zones, certain plants will be perennials, certain plants will be annuals. So a lot of tea is a perennial, if I remember right, but that's in your warmer climates. Same with artichokes. That's why artichokes are expensive too, because most of it is grown in more hot climates, because it stays warm. So your lower California, your New Mexico, your Louisiana, Florida, because it's rare for them to get any freezing weather. I was reading about that because we were doing artichokes for the first time this year, and it said perennial, and I had to read up on it, and I was like, interesting. So I started going through our university's agriculture and started reading up on that, because a lot of times you can get a lot of information from your local universities that's free for agriculture. And that's what I get a lot of my information from. That's done by those that are already experimenting with plants and stuff. That way I can kind of get my own idea. And like I was telling her, when we can get more space, I intend to do tons of different experiments and film it and see what we can do. And it'll be nice, because I definitely have the dream of a greenhouse. That way we can really do what we want with it. But, I think the appeal that we were talking about this is the appeal that we are just a small, humble garden channel. That's your average day Americans, average day gardeners. We're not super wealthy and have, all the fancy stuff.
We don't have all the bells and whistles.
Everyday Joes that are just trying to grow food. And I think that's I feel like that's something that can connect us with most gardeners.
Yeah, most people in general. I mean, when you're struggling to make ends meet, but you still want to go out and do something. I mean, it makes you feel good to be able to grow something yourself that you were able to make a meal with, or contribute to something, or, take something somewhere and say, hey, yeah, I made this with some of my own stuff that I grew. It's a wonderful feeling to be able to do that. And the neighbors around here, they are so appreciative when you give them extra tomatoes or peppers or whatever it is. I mean, they just welcome that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the neighbor gals, I met her, and, just getting to know his neighbors where I didn't before, because when I was working all the time, I really didn't care. But then now it's like, yeah, I kind of want to know the people around. You never know when you have to depend on one another for something. And one of the gals wants to grow some of her own spices and stuff. And I said, sure, come on over, see what I got going on here. We've got a whole area dedicated to nothing but herbs. So
I thought it was funny that when I expanded the operation all the way to the back, that one year everybody's sitting there walking their dogs through the alleyway, and they're like, this garden's impressive. There's so much in there. And I said, yeah. I said, that's what we try to do. I said, we try to grow food. And, that's where I got kind of inspired to do the gardening and cooking channel, because I was like, there's so much to teach, and there's so much to experiment with. And I thought, if we can teach people to grow and store more food, I know it's time consuming sometimes, but as Mom mentioned, it's a callback to nature too, and it can be very peaceful. And that peace is sometimes needs to be cherished. And so I think you can't go wrong doing that. And a lot of people say, well, I can't take care of a plant. I drown it or kill it. Anybody can learn. And there's telltale signs that, okay, maybe you're overwatering or you're underwatering or there's food. Plants can't scream at you, but they let you know. So it's always pretty cool that you can learn the signs that there's something wrong, and then take it from there. I mean, we've had a couple plants that went yellow on me, and I don't know if it was bad seeds or not, but for the most part, they're doing well. Now that I changed some stuff up in it, so they just alerted me that there was trouble.
I think you learn from the things that you grow, and you just, I know it's a journey, and it's unique in its own way, because every year there's something different that you want to learn how to do. There's different seeds that come out that you want to try, and before, like me now, I have turned into a seed fanatic. I'll read an article about something and I'll think, okay, I can grow this, and this. Well, if it's flowers, I can put all of them together in one pot and they're going to do okay. Okay, next thing I know, I've spent $100 on more seeds. I did switch to keeping my seeds in tin cans with lids now, rather than the plastic containers or the boxes. I had a very bad mishap. I was just heartbroken. I had probably close to $500 in seeds, and I hated to tell hubby that went bye-bye. But we had a bad little varmint that got in there and made nesting material. And there wasn't much left for seeds.
Good news is that I
did
came in there and bought a bunch.
I did an experiment though with what looked like flower seeds, so I may have some weird veggies that try to grow too. But I had an area of untouched area in his yard that mostly gets nothing but shade, and I thought, what the heck? I'm going to winter sow those seeds, and I did no-till gardening on that side and put all fresh dirt that was, really good with the compost and everything in it. So it was good to go. Sprinkled the little nest of junk all over the ground and covered it back up, and we'll see what happens.
Yep.
It could be interesting.
But all right, guys, so we've almost at the 2-hour mark on this, and so we went way over our hour introduction on this show. Definitely smash that like button, consider subscribing, and if you like this and you want to do more Q&A with us, we're more than happy to try to schedule, even if it's just once a month, a live stream, just to talk about things, to give knowledge or what we've learned, share, maybe even be able to pull some videos and kind of go over them a little bit more in detail. There's a lot of things we can do with a live stream that will be beneficial.
And I'm really glad to be able to get to know some of our viewers and subscribers, and I greatly appreciate you. I wanted something that I could do that I would really enjoy once I retired. At one point in my life, I had an online magazine, and I was very successful with it. And I did it really hot and heavy for about 3 years. But with working a full-time job and all the stuff that I had going on, it got to be just too much for me. And then once COVID hit, kind of the rock star girl mom that I was trying to do, taking all these pictures of rock bands and everything, it was so much fun, and I enjoyed everybody that I interviewed and everybody that I met, and they were all so great, and they didn't look at me any different because I wasn't up in the high class, and everything. I was just me, and they liked me for me, and it was a feel good because they accepted me for being me. And that's what I like with this garden channel. I can teach people things that I know and things that worked for me. And if something didn't work well, I can share an experience of something that went bad and why and what I learned from it. So I appreciate you. I appreciate your viewership. I appreciate the time that you spend watching the videos. And I know when I do some of them, they tend to get lengthy. Like I told one lady the other day, grab a cup of tea or a cup of coffee and listen to me like you're listening to a podcast, and let me ramble on, because I guarantee you're going to get something good out of that. And then later she told me, she goes, I did just what you said. I was doing housework, and there was something you said caught my attention, and I had to sit down and listen to you for a while. She said, and then I got back up, and she said, and then I was like, I got to rewatch that video. So it makes me feel good that I'm actually being able to give something back to other people by teaching them something that I know and love. And gardening is something that I do know and love, and I've expanded the yard as much as I can. There's not much more I can do now except learn different ways of planting to grow more food
and growing up more,
and redoing the front yard sometime, trying to make it look a lot nicer. But that's that's just, you know, hopefully I live long enough to accomplish everything that I want to do. But you all mean a lot to me. It's like having a big garden family. So I appreciate you. We appreciate you. And thank you so much. And the more people that you can tell about Kai Dragon Gardening and Cooking and encourage them to try to subscribe to our channel, they don't have to sit down and watch. They can just listen. Sometimes you learn a lot just by hearing things. So,
And Ram Crosses, thanks for the content. Well appreciated, brother. And I know you've been so supportive of, you know, the Kai Dragon brand. So really appreciate you, man. Really, really do. So wrapping this up, just remember Kai Dragon Gardening is like fire, and she's gonna say something about romaine.
don't be melancholy. We're talking about gardening. Let us remain happy.
Yeah, she had to come up with this gardening stuff last year, and I was just like, oh Lord. But it was catchy and funny. So, all right, guys, thanks again, and you all have a wonderful evening.
Love you.